Hello, wine enthusiasts. Thanks for joining me for today's travels on the wine road.
I just want to make a wine as best as we can and deliver it to people that like it, like the style. And then eventually, when they open it up, it adds some enjoyment to their day or evening. But I want to make the best possible thing I can, highly detailed and balanced, you know.
On today's podcast, you'll hear my intimate conversation with winemaker and iconic cult wine producer Michael Browne, who gained fame with the highly respected Kosta Browne. He has since moved on to his new project, Cirq. Yeah, it's an interesting name that conjures up images of a bygone era of calliopes, sawdust, and the colorful tents of the circus. We'll get into that shortly. During this interview, you'll really get to know Michael, how he's honed his craft and visualizes it. You'll also hear about the meaningful experiences he's had in his past and how they inspire his process. I had the chance to interview Michael a few years ago when he was still with Kosta Browne. At that time, he handed me his business card and another one that said Cirq, C-I-R-Q, and casually said it was something he was working on. I've often been surprised by the amount of people I've come across who enjoy wine who have not heard of Kosta Browne. But then it was priced as a luxury wine, starting around $100 for Appellation wines and over $200 for single vineyard and their 4-barrel wines. Their intensely flavored Pinot Noir and Chardonnay was highly sought after, and you had to be one of the lucky few thousand who made it onto their allocation list. Well, Michael has moved on and is now focusing on Cirq. And yes, he is continuing with the allocation membership. He seems to be pretty comfortable with that exclusivity scenario. From what I read, Cirq has been around since 2009.
It has. Actually, 2008, when Charlie Chenoweth approached me with a vineyard that was unnamed at that point, became Bootlegger's Hill. And he said, "Hey, Michael, this is a great property. Would love to have you involved with it." And I love Charlie, and I said, "Let's make it happen." But neither of us had any money. But we went for it, and I wanted to have my own brand someday because I knew Kosta Browne. Eventually, I'd be out of Kosta Browne. And that was the plan. And so I wanted to have my own vineyard, and it started with Bootleggers. And it was an old apple orchard, and we scraped together money. And the first distribution we got from Kosta Browne was in '08. It was a couple $100,000, which was big money for my wife and I and our family. And we paid off our debt, and we had about $110,000 left. I took $100,000 of that and put it into Bootleggers, and I didn't tell my wife. And I said, "Don't worry, this will work out. This will work out." So, and it did, and it was a great project planning that vineyard and moving that along. And it's called Bootlegger's Hill because Charlie's dad. We were talking to him one time, and his family has lived in this area since the 1840s. And we were telling him where this vineyard was. At the time, he was probably 81, 82 years old. And he said, "Yeah, that is where the bootleggers used to come over the hill during Prohibition to bring their wares into Santa Rosa and then to San Francisco." And I said, "Well, it's Bootlegger's Hill then."
Perfect.
And the name stuck. And it's a really cool vineyard. And then we got into Treehouse, which Charlie planted earlier, and I think in '05. And we became partners in that vineyard and took the lease over in that. And Charlie owns that piece of land. And it's a spectacular vineyard. And then in 11 was our first vintage where we started Cirq production from Treehouse Vineyard because Bootleggers was just planted. Right. And then 13 was the first vintage from Bootleggers.
So I'm guessing now Kosta Browne's kind of like the beloved family member who has moved away, and now that's passed, and Cirq is your own estate winery. But you're still hanging in the neighborhood. You love this Russian River Valley.
There's nothing like Russian River Valley. To me, this is the Garden of Eden, and everything grows well here. Plants, animals, trees, grass, people. People grow well here, too. That's why I wanted to raise my family here. But you look around, we have rivers and streams and hills and mountains and redwood forests and grapevines and gardens and farms. It's a magical land, and we're blessed to be here.
Great vibe, too.
Cool vibe, very cool vibe, yeah. And good energy around this place, especially in the Russian River Valley in West County. I really like it. And all the way to the coast, where the influence of the ocean, not only the cooling influence of vineyards, but just the influence of the power of the ocean, right? Yeah. It adds a lot of energy to this area, which is really cool.
Had some fog this morning on my way over here, and I could see out the front there. It's still hanging in the valleys. And and you love that rich fruit expression that the Russian River Valley Pinot Noir has to offer.
I do. Yeah, I do. And the textures, I'm a texture guy and a mouthfeel when it comes to wine, a mouthfeel guy, and those the mouthfeel to me are like sounds, like tones with music, bass tones, mid tones, high tones, different bass tones, different mid tones, different high tones, and we can hit all those in the Russian River Valley with Pinot Noir and other wines. But I'm obviously focused on Pinot Noir. But within that. Within Pinot Noir, we can hit all those different tones because of the diversity of soils, terroir, climate. It's such a diverse region, but it holds its own together with those textures and flavors and just that energy, right? And we can hit the electricity at the high tone. We can hit the mid cello version of something happening with a certain clone or a vineyard or farming practices. And we can hit those bass tones as well. And my goal in a wine is to make sure that all of those are in harmony. And the vintage to me is a piece of music. And then we can, add these different vineyards and textures as instruments within that to make a whole sound, if that makes sense.
Right. And then you can have a different composition every year.
Every year. And that's what I focus on, the vintage. I love the sites because they're so individual, but the vintage is what Mother Nature brings, is something that I cherish and something that is of utmost importance when I look at wines and making wine. I want to express that and I want to honor that because that is Mother Nature's fingerprint on it.
He's Michael Browne, and with his 2017 vintage of Cirq, he's stepping away from the single vineyard wines that was common with Kosta Browne, exploring the method of blending multiple vineyards into one bottling.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we did the vineyard designate thing because that was kind of what was being done. And we were following different people doing these different things with our wines and our brandy because we didn't know what we were doing, right? We just said, let's go for somebody, let's look at somebody we think is really cool, and let's kind of try to emulate that in a sense. And it was great, and I learned a lot with that. But within that, each vineyard, I would try to dissect into different components, whether it's whole cluster, clonal differences, early picking, mid picking, late picking, different leafing, you name it, right? I would try to dissect it to have components and then blend those back together in a way that made sense as a balanced wine within, the context of the sounds. And with the 17 vintage of Cirq, I thought, well, why don't I just take a few more vineyards and kind of pick all these, try to make the wines in a way that they can have these different components and then bring them together for the most balanced wine I can produce. And it was refreshing because now it's complex, but it's refreshing that I'm just going to make one wine for Cirq with the 17 vintage. And I have a lot of different colors and sounds to deal with to produce that.
Yeah. Truly going to be the composer and work with the whole symphony.
That's a good analogy, yeah. And that's what I'm trying to do. Because there's so many, just within Pinot Noir alone, there are so many different, I keep saying tones and colors, but there's so many different tones and colors within that. Mm-hmm. You can see colors on your palette. You can see purple, blue, pink, whatever. You can hear mid-tone, high-tone. You close your eyes, you can see color. Close your ears, you can hear sound. That's kind of what I look at. And so I look at it with all these different aspects. And it's a bit complex, but that's kind of what I like. Yeah. And then I can take those and, again, make a cool piece of music, I guess. I guess maybe because I always wanted to be a musician and I never was. And I'm kind of like, why didn't I learn how to play guitar? So I'll try to play it through wine.
Wow, well, you've made a success doing that. You're a very popular wine musician.
I still want to learn how to play guitar, but we'll see. Maybe the tambourine.
You got plenty of time.
Yeah.
I'm sure if he put forth the effort, he could learn to play guitar. You'll be amazed at the talents he developed when he was a kid. Michael Browne's brand, Cirq, pays homage to it. I was wondering how he came up with the circus theme, so I had to ask him about it.
Yeah, my family's history, there was just me and one other guy, my great-grandfather. We were the kind of circus people, right, yeah. For whatever reason. When I was a kid, I heard my great-grandfather was a circus clown, professional circus clown, and I thought it was kind of cool, but I never really paid attention to it. And then in my hometown, I grew up in Wenatchee, Washington, Apple Country. There was Wenatchee Youth Circus. And when we were little kids, we'd go and watch the circus. It was awesome. They had all the acts. No animals, right? But everything else. High wire, trapeze, the band, clown acts, unicycles, brilliant. And as a kid, it was awesome. Yeah. Even adults. It's a great show. And then I got into school, wasn't into sports, didn't know what to do. And then I had a friend that said, hey, he was a trapeze guy. We were both in 7th grade, I think, 12 years old. He was one of these kids that flew through the air, triple backflips, you know. We became friends, and he goes, join the circus. And I said, I don't know anything about it. And it's kind of intimidating. And he goes, don't worry, it's just fun. We go set the circus show up, we do a circus show, and then we all kind of run around the town. Whatever town you're in, because all the parents were there. It was started by the principal of our junior high school, a guy named Paul Pugh, great, wonderful man, and so it was wholesome. But we would go set off on these little excursions throughout the towns in the middle of the night, wherever we were, you know, around Washington State, a little bit of Oregon. But anyway, the first year I moved mats around, and it was kind of very intimidating. But I was 12 years old. People are doing all this breathing fire and stuff, right? It was pretty intense. But I wanted to be on the unicycle team. So the next year, my parents got me a unicycle for Christmas. Nice. And I started practicing. And before long, I was kind of the unicycle kid around town. And I didn't care what people thought. I'm just going to learn how to ride the unicycle because I'm going to get on that team. I'm going to get in that act. The next year I did. And it was cool. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in a circus act. The practice paid off. Right. I didn't really analyze it. I just, wow, that worked. The next year I got on the fire eating team. That was my second favorite act. Because I'm never going to get on the trapeze or the high wire. That's beyond me. But I can figure out this fire eating and fire breathing thing. Wow. And I did. Burned my face off one time. But that's a different story. You get injured in the circus, you know?
Yeah, that's part of the game.
And then then the next year I got on a few more acts, bull whip, a couple ladder acts, double trapeze, some girls swinging from your neck and stuff like that. Then I got on the high wire. I practiced. That was scary.
I bet.
Scary. 25 feet in the air on a bicycle and then people on your shoulders and you're balancing.
Holy cow.
Holy cow's right. Yeah. And then the last 2 years I was catcher on the flying trapeze and it was crazy. And all of a sudden, by the time I was 18, in 6 years, I was in most of the acts.
You're highly experienced.
Very. And it was really a great experience, one of the greatest experiences of my life. And what it taught me was about practice, hard work, dedication, failure, risk, showmanship, reward, all those things.
And more importantly, I think, facing fear.
Facing fear, yes, because you had to do that all the time. And
if you can achieve that, there's a lot of things that you can do in life after that.
Like make wine.
Well, and get into heavy and big money, you know, and investments and such.
Or things, whatever it may be, climbing mountains or doing whatever, you know, being a good parent or something, whatever it is, you know, life is life. But it taught me a lot. And then I got into the, you know, restaurant stuff, came to California, Sonoma County, got into restaurants, fell in love with the idea of making wine. Terrible student, terrible. Didn't go to college. 2 years at the JC. Couldn't do it. Not going to get a job making wine because I don't have a degree making wine. And just started keeping sommelier in restaurant. Maybe I'll do a restaurant company. Because I always want, the American dream too was part of this whole mix. I wanted my own business. I wanted to grow something and start with nothing and build something. That was always with me from like age 10 for some reason. I don't know what it was. But it was just driving me, and I go, I don't know what it's going to be. And then one year I finally said, you know what, I'm going to make wine. I had moved back to Seattle, not Wenatchee, but Seattle, just see if I wanted to settle up there after being 6 years down in Sonoma County. Kind of stumbling around life. Got a job at a restaurant, then got a job at a wine distributorship because I wanted to be in the wine business. Big distributor. And I just hated it. It was brutal. You're selling widgets. It's not wine, boxes. Mm-hmm. Nothing wrong with distributors. I mean, you're selling stuff. Just wasn't for me. And I met a gal that worked there. We started dating, and like 3 months into dating her, I said, you know what? I sat her down and I said, I'm going to move back to Sonoma County. I might get my job back at this restaurant, which was John Ash and Company. Mm-hmm. I'm going to volunteer at a winery which was Deerfield Ranch in Sonoma with Robert Rex. He taught me a lot.
Okay.
And I'm going to sleep in my buddy's futon. My buddy Steve, still my best friend, right? And I asked her if she wanted to go, and she looked at me like I was crazy. And now we have 3 kids, beautiful, still married, 20 years next year. It's really great. And she's been along this ride with the whole time.
And now that it's your own project, it's also becoming a family venture?
It is, yeah, and it's really cool. I mean, I've been blessed with some great partners in the past, but I'm this kind of guy that I have to have full control. I got to have full control. It's always bugged me. So now we do, and I don't have full control. My wife does, but now it's our family business. We own the majority. We're never selling it, and my wife's very involved now, and the kids are getting older, so they're still in school, but they're getting an interest, and if they like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. But yeah, it's Brown Family Wines. That's a company name.
Great.
And that's what I've always wanted. My main goal was someday to have a winery and a vineyard and a brand that we owned as a family, and we now have it, and I'm frankly blown away by that because I never thought it would happen.
Really?
Never thought. A million years, yeah.
There's a number of things in your life that I bet you didn't think would happen that have.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
When I spoke to you a few years ago, you said, we take what we do seriously, but not ourselves. And then I can tell you, you're still living that philosophy.
I almost just said that. Yeah, that's the same thing. We take what we do very seriously, but we're all people, and let's not get our heads up somewhere they shouldn't be. There's no room for massive ego or narcissism or any of this weird stuff, right? It's just about trying to, again, hanging out by the fire with cool friends and family. And all we're doing is fermenting grapes, man, right? That's all we're doing, and putting a label on it. Simple as it gets. Again, a lot of detail behind it. And again, we take all that very seriously. Customer service and finance and everything you can possibly think of. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, we're just people, and we're just doing our thing, feeding our kids, trying to, wake up on time and, just normal stuff. And it's all normal stuff. And that's what it is. But I was about to say that because we do all take what we do very seriously down to the pinpoint. We got a problem right now where people repack some stuff that wasn't right, so they got to go repack the whole thing. It's a nightmare. But I wouldn't stand for it. No, my staff wouldn't stand for it either because it's not going to hit the end consumer properly. 10 times the work now, but that's okay.
It's a reflection of who you are, so you got to make it the highest quality.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. We're in the business of delivering a product to somebody, all-encompassing, the product, the packaging, how it gets there, the customer service, that whole getting a product to a consumer in the highest end possible way that's authentic. And we will back that up every single time, no matter what. And I like that. I like that challenge. I'd like to, that's our challenge. Let's get it done. And every year, let's hone in on that. Let's keep polishing that thing because it's never going to be done. You're never going to learn it all. You're always going to have challenges. So why not just polish it every step of the way? And when a challenge comes up, let's take it on, right? Mm-hmm. And just keep going in that direction. And that's really the philosophy and the culture that I'm trying to portray, right?
Let's get on that unicycle.
Yeah. I can still ride one.
I bet. I'd love to see that. Yeah. Do you do that once in a while at your parties?
No. Trying to stay away from eating fire, too. That's pretty easy. Breathing fire is hard. But anyway.
Very similar to a 3-ring circus, huh? That wine industry.
It is. There's a lot of drunk clowns, a lot of performances. It's definitely a balancing act. And there's a lot of analogies that actually make sense. Sure. It's a balancing act. And we are basically in the entertainment industry, especially with direct-to-consumer businesses. People want to know, and it's got to be authentic. Our core word is authenticity, and you have to project that in some way, which is tricky, right? It's tricky to people.
You're the ring master, so you can do that projection and keep everything together in the way that you see it.
I try to, yeah. You try to keep everything together. Yeah, and it is. Again, that's where the team comes in. That's really the glue and the power is the team around what's going on here, the people we have. And it's always been that way. And so,
on Cirq's website, there's a letter from Michael, and also in his PR, he speaks highly of his team and gives them a lot of credit. It's good to see. You'd think as he's continuing to build the Cirq brand, he'd be busy enough. But there's yet another brand on the horizon, and it's called Chev.
Yeah, it's called Chev. And I've never been into having a second brand or a second label or whatever you want to categorize it in. You take all your junk wine and put it in something and sell it and lower price point. Never made sense for us in Kosta Browne. Still doesn't make sense to me today. But within this context, say if I have 50 tons of fruit and I use 25 for Cirq, but it's all really good wine. That just happened to be the right musical tone for Cirq. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not going to go get rid of this really good stuff. If something's bad, I'm just going to get rid of it right off the bat. Well, then I have an opportunity to then be a little more playful, right? Yeah. I can make something a little different, not completely off my style because I have my style, but I can throw in a Chardonnay or something. I can throw in maybe eventually a Washington Bordeaux blend or something kind of nutty like that. Not to go crazy. I don't want to build this thing up to be some massive brand. It's just more of a playground, but serious stuff. And yeah, it's called Chev, and it's more of an industrial age thing. Cirq is more of a 1905 San Francisco high-end product feel, right, is what makes sense to me. Some craftsman way back when is making something, and some snake oil salesman is doing the thing, and all that stuff, right? And then the Chev is more like a hand-wrought, sort of a shop deal, sort of a... You're going to make something out of iron and steel, but still fine-lined, still very sort of precise. And so I'm down in Atlanta one time at this high museum auction, great auction, and I'm sitting there at the hotel bar having a burger before this event, and I'm looking at all these bottles of booze on the back bar.
Sure.
I love branding, so I'm checking all this stuff out. And this bottle of Ford gin pops out at me. And I go, that is cool. And I asked the bartender, can I look at that? And I looked at it, really cool, old school packaging, and it said Ford on it. And I go, that's cool. That'd be a cool wine brand. And I start looking on the website, and I go, oh, Francis Ford Coppola. That's not going to fly. And so I started thinking about that era, 40s, 50s, manufacturing kind of industrial age stuff. And I go, well, Chevrolet and Chev. Whoa, hold on. Chevelle, that whole cool thing, right?
Chevelles were nice.
They were. And Chev is a term for Chevelle and all these different things. And I looked on the internet, nothing, so we secured that. And so it's really very similar to Cirq. It'll have a kind of a similar label component with different things in the back. Mm-hmm. We'll get to talk about that. But it's going to be in the same family, but just a different sort of a version. So not only can we not waste all of our wine, but we can do something very fun and creative at the high end too. It'll be less expensive as Cirq, but still high end. But it's going to be a fun project. So we'll make 3 barrels this year, bottle 3 barrels in 17, and then in 18 we'll do a bit more. But it's only going to be high end stuff. It's just a little different flavor of a brand. Fun conversation, man.
Yeah, thanks. Michael Browne. You can see 2 of the historic-looking labels for Cirq, one featuring a circus image, at cirq.com, CIRQ.com. And there you can read about his vineyards and sign up for the mailing list and allocation. There's currently a waiting list, but if you're considering it, now's the time to sign up. Eventually, there will be a tasting room. They're working on the estate, but it will likely be for members only. But keep your eyes open for the brand. Thanks to Michael for his time and showing me around the property. And thank you for listening to this episode of On the Wine Road. I'll see you out there.